In this video, we're going to talk about Adjust Colors, sometimes called Adjust Polypaint, which is found under the Tool menu. What Adjust Colors allows us to do is spot mask based on RGB value and then change the colors on our existing polypaint. So here we have our alien. If we look under the subtools, it's just the head and the eyeball subtools. And if we look under layers, there are no layers. This polypaint exists in the overall polypaint for the character. Now, we created these skin markings or tattoos using the deco brush with polypaint. So this is all just color on the surface. Now let's say that we want to change just the color of these stripes. Well, what we can do is control-click on the background to mask the character. Then go to Tool, Polypaint, and there's a button here called Adjust Colors. Now if we open that, it opens a separate window which we navigate just like we would in ZBrush. We can recenter the model, we can frame, zoom, move, or just use our hotkeys. Now we have a mask over the entire character right now. That's why it looks gray here. At the top of the right-hand corner, we have Reset and Restore for our settings. We can hide colors, which hides the polypaint, and we can hide materials, which gives us just a flat color view. We can hide our mask, or we can invert the mask. Right now, the whole character is masked, so this won't have any effect. Now, if we come into this with a mask already applied, we can use our samplers here to overwrite the existing mask, to mask or to unmask. So I'm going to turn on Unmask, click this swatch, and drag over to this purple. Now what that does is it unmasks based upon this color selection. If I invert the mask, it will make the unpainted, the non-purple areas masked. Invert it again, and it makes the stripes masked. If I turn back on or turn off hide materials, we can see our materials again. Now I can adjust the tolerance of this mask using this slider here. So I can basically clamp or unclamp the masking here. Now, if I come down here to HSV Hue, if I click and drag this slider, I can change the color of the polypaint in that unmasked area. So we can make this, let's make this very, very red. So we'll bring the HSV Hue up to red, and let's turn the saturation well up on that. And maybe let's make it brighter by turning the intensity up. Now I can also adjust based on RGB. I can do RGB intensity, RGB contrast, and RGB gamma. So let's go ahead and click OK. And now we come back into our regular ZBrush view. We can clear that mask, and you can see that it has changed just those stripes. So this gives us an enormous amount of control over adjusting our polypaint, being able to spot select things. So let's try that again. This time we won't use a mask. We'll go to Adjust Colors, and I am going to mask the stripes. Now I'm going to invert the mask by turning off Invert Mask. So now the skin is unmasked. So what this allows me to do is come in here and make some changes. Let's increase the green intensity. We can make the skin more green. And that's not going to affect the masked areas, which are the stripes. It's only affecting the skin. So let's say, for example, I want to change the green, but not the stripes and not the face. So what I'll do is I will mask the stripes. And let's mask the face area here. I'm just going to mask over that bit of color there. Now, if I adjust my tolerance, I can turn that up and down, so we can sort of crunch that down so it's just the face. And we can blur the mask edges, so that gives us a little bit more softness around those edges. If I hide the mask, let's turn on Hide Mask. I can come in here and make another selection. So turn Hide Materials on. Let's turn off Hide Mask and see what we've got. We want to get some of that purple there. So let's go ahead and grab this. And once again, we will adjust our tolerance on just that color. We'll crunch that down so we're isolating just that face. There we go. And let's turn off Mask by turning on Hide Mask. And let's see what we've got right here. We've got a little bit here that we want to grab as well. So we'll turn Hide Mask off. And let's grab this one. And we'll get these bits in here. Let's invert the mask. Grab these bits in here. Turn Invert Mask off. And that might be a little too much. Let's dial back that and see if we can't get that right down to the face. There we go. Go ahead and click OK. Actually, I want to get that little bit right there, so I'm going to get that one right there. There we go. And then we'll turn our tolerance down. Perfect. Now click OK. Now you see that we've isolated just the face with that mask. So I can go back into Adjust Colors, and let's go ahead and make some changes. Let's adjust the greens and the blues there. Let's go to the blue intensity, and let's put a little bit more blue in the head there. So we can shift that over from green into blue. And if I turn on Hide Mask, I can judge this with the other colors right here in my screen. So let's go ahead and turn that up to about there and click OK. Clear our mask, and those changes are now in our Polypaint. Now let's say that we wanted to do this on something that has layers. Say, for example, if you've got the alien that we painted in our chapter on Polypaint layers and sculpting, we can isolate things that are just in a layer. So let's take a look at how to do that now. So here we have our alien that we made in the chapter on layers and Polypaint. If we open up the layer palette here, you see that we've got 3 different layers. We have a layer for yellow, we have a layer of purple, and we have a sculpting layer where we put in wrinkles. So if I turn on the purple layer, select that layer, make sure it has the white bracket around it, and go into record mode. Now, if I go into Polypaint, adjust colors, we can adjust just what's in this layer. So I don't even really need to put a mask in here. I can start to adjust my saturation, and it's only going to impact what's actually in that layer. But I want to show you a neat trick. I like to make stripes and marks like this with a little bit of a darker edge around them, or a contrast edge. It could be darker, it could be lighter. If you look at the aquatic patterning on fish or amphibians, they often have a little contrast stripe going around their skin markings. So what I'll do is I will mask based on this color. Let's turn our tolerance down. I think to about 0.3 would be good. Let's invert that mask and just see what we're getting here. Let's turn our blur mask up so we get a nice soft edge on that. Now let's change our hue here. See, what's happening is we're hue shifting what's around those stripes. If I invert this mask again, you can see what's happening there. It can invert where that effect is taking place. So I want that red to be around the borders. If I change my tolerance, I can clamp that down a little bit. If we bring it down too far, it'll go away entirely. I think 3 is about as far as it'll go, but if I set that to 2, no, we can get it down to 2. Let's turn up the saturation on this. There we go, and then maybe put a little bit more blur on that mask. Now click OK, and it will have just impacted what was in that layer. So we can do the same thing for the yellow layer. If I press the arrow key here to select the next layer up, let's turn record off on this layer, and then let's turn record on. Let's turn yellow all the way up. Now remember, the top layer in Polypaint in ZBrush is sitting beneath the layers underneath it. It's not what you might expect, so keep that in mind. And if we go into record mode, that layer is going to pop up to the top. So we'll go to Adjust Colors, and maybe we want to change this some yellow. We feel like that's too contrasty. We're not really happy with it. We can do a hue shift using the slider here. We can make this a little bit sort of more like a yellow ochre. We can desaturate it a little bit. Maybe we want to mask out the yellow here. Let's invert that mask, and let's change our tolerance so it's a little bit sharper. Invert that again. And let's see, let's change our intensity. Let's bring this down so it's a little bit darker. And let's go ahead and click OK. And there you go. You can see that that has been applied. Now when I leave record mode, it'll drop back down underneath the other poly painting. Now if I want to bake all of this down, I can just click bake all and it'll bake all those layers down. They go away. And this is now all collapsed into a single Z tool with no layers. If we go back into adjust colors, now we can sample things again. So if I still need to isolate just these bits, the yellow ochre, I can do that. I can adjust the tolerance to really isolate just those values. Let's turn on hide mask so we can judge our colors. Maybe we want to hue shift this again. Maybe we're not happy with that particular color. We want to bring this more into the red region. Maybe we want to lighten the tint, so we can turn the light up by adjusting tint. Maybe we want to change our intensity. When we're happy with that, click OK. It will mask based on our masking that we had in Adjust Colors, so we just clear our mask, and there we go. So before we complete this lesson, I want to show you one more demonstration of how we can use Adjust Polypaint. This time we'll use it on a skull to adjust the distressing down around the base of a tooth. Let's take a look at that now. So here's another interesting way that we can use Adjust Colors under Polypaint. So I've got this skull Z tool open with multiple subtools, and you see that we've got teeth here as well. So I have the lower teeth subtool selected, and there is Polypaint obviously on these teeth. So let's say, for example, I want to adjust Polypaint to give some discoloration to the roots of the teeth, leaving the enamel intact. If I go to Adjust Colors, here you see the currently selected subtool is on screen. Now, if I click and drag from my selection swatch here, I can sample off the image, or I could sample off the palette down here. The idea being I just want to get something that's representative of the color that I've painted onto the enamel face of the teeth, masking out the roots. I can adjust the tolerance here, and that will expand out that selection. I could also blur the mask, which gives me a nice feathering there. And of course, I can always come back here and reselect. There we go. That's feeling pretty good. Tweak that tolerance as required. And now I will hide the mask. So the mask is no longer visible, and I can start to make adjustments here. So maybe I'll turn down the RGB intensity. Now you see that it's inverted. It's occurring on the enamel, not the roots. So I'm going to unclick Invert Mask. And then let's turn up the saturation on this so we can get this nice sort of tartary kind of discoloration at the roots. And let's go ahead and blur that mask some more so we can get that bleeding right up into the surface of the teeth. So when I'm happy with that, I just click OK. And now there's going to be a mask that's applied based on that. Just Control, click, and drag, and that clears the mask. And you can see this is a very, very simple way to go in and adjust the Polypaint coloration just by sampling directly and then masking based on color, hue, and intensity. So we just go ahead and Alt-click on the top dentals here. Make sure that we've got those selected. And then if we go into Adjust Colors once more, I'll make another selection here. Again, I can drag right here onto the object to sample color, or I can sample color directly from here. So let's move this over more towards yellow. So if I click and drag from here, I can sample what color is there, and then click and drag from here, I can get a good selection. That's actually quite good. I like that. So let's turn on Hide Mask, turn off Invert Mask, and then let's turn up the saturation on that, and then let's turn up the Blur Mask. Now we're getting an unexpected, let's go ahead and frame that again. We're getting an unexpected result up here, so let's turn that saturation down a little bit, and let's just hue shift this over towards something more yellow. There we go. Now let's turn the intensity down so it's a little bit darker, and let's blur that mask a little bit more. Maybe we can tinker with our tolerance Just get some more spread in that discoloration. There we go. And I might blur that mask just a little bit more. There we go. And click OK. And then clear the mask. And we've applied that discoloration to both the uppers and the lowers. So it's just a neat little technique that you can use to make further adjustments to your polypaint. Sort of a case study of this being used actually on a model to do a specific coloration shift that might require that you go into Mari or Photoshop and do some tweaks that here you can now just do right in ZBrush under the Polypaint menu. So Adjust Polypaint is a very, very strong tool. Obviously, it gives you an enormous amount of control over customizing the polypaint after you've already put it down. It's wonderful if you have to create variations or make edits to something after the fact. It's a really great way to give you that extra bit of control when you're painting inside of ZBrush. And I find it especially useful for things like skin markings, tattoos, appliques, decals, things like that that we might apply using Polypaint. So I hope you found this useful, and I'll see you in the next video.